Good morning and welcome to today's edition of the Sports Break. It's been a while since I've seen you guys, so I hope you had a great holiday. I'm Renee Washington here with Erica Vanstone, the roller derby phenomenon. So normally we talk about the NBA, the NFL, things going on in college sports and all the controversy behind everything with that. But today we're going to sink into something more exciting and different in roller derby. So, Erica, you have been competing in roller derby for how long?
Tell me about roller derby.
Yes.
So, ironically, I've only been competing as a skater for about 3.5 years, but I started with roller derby in 2007 as an announcer. I walked into, a friend of mine was a part of Philly roller derby, and she's an anesthesiologist.
Oh, wow.
And fell in love with the sport, and so I went and supported her and watched one of her games, and I stood there and I said, you know what, I love this, but I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
I think one thing that would be really fun is to try announcing, and I did, so I started there. And then I was really excited to try getting a little bit deeper into it, so I started officiating.
Oh, nice.
So I first got on skates as an official, and then I think by that time I was finally ready to take the plunge.
Yeah.
So I've been in the sport for a little over, about 11 years now.
Wow, that is incredible. So you didn't grow up watching roller derby.
No, and I knew about it. It was part of my consciousness. I went roller skating as a kid. Yeah. Loved it. It was something that I grew up in the 80s, and so it was something that you did in the 80s. The internet hadn't been invented yet. Video games, really, for the most part, were very new. So the thing to do on a Saturday when you had absolutely nothing to do was to go roller skating. So it was something that I really enjoyed doing and that I was familiar with, and I think that's probably how a lot of women have gotten involved in the sport as they grew up roller skating. Friends of mine who are on my team grew up with their families running roller skating rinks, for example. So that's really sort of what attracted people, I think, when the sport first started reoccurring in the early 2000s.
Yeah, so you took something that is a hobby or a fun activity that for most people, and now you get to compete in that day in and day out. But what people may not know is it's not just fun as what you see in a roller skating rink, people just skating around dancing. I don't know. It's a contact sport.
I liked it. That's my idea.
It is fun, but yes, it is. But for anyone that does not understand the strength needed to play roller derby, because you're not just skating around, you're getting knocked, you're getting bumped, you're bumping other people. Talk us through what a typical roller derby game is like, and what position do you play? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I compete on the B team in Philly roller derby. We were called the Independence Dolls, and now we're called the Block Party, because who doesn't love a block party in Philadelphia? I sure do. So what the game is basically 2 30-minute periods, and each 30-minute period is broken up into a handful of gameplay components called jams. If you've ever watched the old school roller derby, it's the same way. So basically, you can skate for up to 2 minutes. Each team fields 4 blockers at a time and 1 jammer. And the jammers are the point scorers. They're basically the quarterback and the ball. So what you're trying to do is pass opposing players, and once you get through the pack once, you can score points for every opposing player you pass.
Oh, wow.
So my position is the pivot, and the pivot is the skater with the striped helmet, and that's the only skater on the team that a jammer can pass the star to, and the star is really the point scoring mechanism. So once you pass the star, you've passed the ability to score points. So the pivot is kind of a sneaky way. If the jammer gets into any trouble, needs some help, gets stuck in a pack, you take that star off, you pass it to the pivot. The pivot hopefully is in a better position to be able to get out of that pack and score points.
So it really is a team sport.
It really is a team sport. If you're blocking, and actually if you're the pivot, you are playing offense and defense at the same time.
Nice. Yeah. So something that people may not realize is it's just like every other sport. You have some positions, you have some organization, you have some tactics behind it. You're not just skating around in circles. I mean, you're really working together as a team to try to get and win. and beat your opponent.
Absolutely, and a lot like American football, there are play formations, there are playbooks, there are certain strategies that you use. We're drawing very similar diagrams on our charts when we're trying to break down plays. You're basically trying to clear one side of the track or another. You've got this boundary to work with inside lines and outside lines. And your job is to sort of guard or clear those lines depending on what you're trying to do at any given moment. It's just like football. You're trying to open up holes.
Right. Now, we do talk a lot on our show about the growth of other sports. I mean, for me as a soccer player, how soccer's trying to grow and expand. And for you working in, let me make sure I get the Women's Flat Track Derby Association. What people may not know is Erica also helps work with that organization to grow the sport of roller derby. So for you, I mean, having a sport that maybe people don't realize is possible to play and watch and things like that, and on the men, it's not just a female sport, it's men and women that are competing. What are you doing to try to grow that sport and raise awareness for it?
Right. So I'm the Chief Media Officer for the Women's Flat Track Derby Association, and it's a fancy title, but at its core, I created the broadcast program. So I have a degree in film. What's great about roller derby is that in its current incarnation, it's a sport where anyone can play. And I don't know, I like to think of the movie Ratatouille.
Oh, I love
that movie. Right? So you know how Chef Gustav is always saying anyone can cook? I feel the same way about roller derby. Anyone can play roller derby. It looks terrifying, but I think that's what's appealing is that you get into this position. Women really, in my generation, were not taught that they could play contact sports. But you can, and it took me several years to get to the point where I was even ready to entertain the idea. And that, in and of itself, is the idea that we're looking to convey, that really anyone can cook. Like you can get out there and skate. One of the things that we do in Philly and most leagues around the world will do this is we consistently recruit. We call them fresh meat. But we are consistently recruiting for more and more. The Women's Flat Track Derby Association is over 400 leagues and apprentice leagues strong. So we are the biggest. The Men's Roller Derby Association has, I think, around 60 or 70 leagues right now. The Junior Roller Derby Association is doing really well and growing, and they have two competitive divisions. They've got an open division, which is co-ed, and they've got an all-female division because they do want to preserve that part of the sport for women that is about teaching women that they can do whatever they set their minds to. So what I try to do in the broadcast component is put all of that and kind of nail it down to one brand through video broadcast and through all of our video productions that we do.
I love the ratatouille metaphor. First of all, it just made me hungry. But also just the idea of breaking barriers and having people understand that you can do this too. And for you, I mean, you didn't grow up competing in roller derby. It was something that you picked up 11 years ago and really got into it, and now you're fully involved in a lot of aspects of your life. I mean, even your son competes in roller derby.
My 9-year-old son, Catman, competes in roller derby, and we're actually going to be going to Loveland, Colorado next weekend for the Junior Roller Derby Association Championships. And he's an announcer as well, pretty much because I force him to be.
That's okay.
But you know, I think it's an important experience for me to have a son who is 9 be able to compete in a contact sport with other little girls. And for both of them to look each other in the eye as equals and to step onto that track and to not be afraid to hit each other or take a hit from somebody on that track. The message that sends of equality and equity is just phenomenal, and I think that's what's really attracted so many younger and older players.
And you don't see that across other sports.
No,
I mean, there's always a separation, and even rules are changed. I mean, from lacrosse, baseball versus softball, a lot of sports change their rules for girls and women to make it less physical to baby girls in a sense. And even we were talking before the show about the idea of lingerie football and how women are now competing and still playing football like men, but they have to wear significantly less clothing to be able to do so. So the idea that women in male sports are different entities, and one's more for entertainment and fun, and one's more for it's softer and
Yeah.
different type of entertainment.
You know, and to be honest, that's a challenge that I faced right out of the gate in a broadcast perspective.
Yeah.
Is most other women in sports were portrayed in this very specific way
Right.
on camera. Either something in the direction of the Lingerie Football League or Legends Football League, as I think they've now rebranded, to make it a spectacle, to make it, initially when we restarted roller derby in the early 2000s, it was about that spectacle. It was about wearing fishnets and having tattoos and sort of reclaiming that. And now I think we've grown beyond that, and we're looking to showcase the athleticism.
Perfect. Well, we will dive into that some more when we get back. We do have to take a quick break. But when we get back, as I mentioned, we will talk more about women versus male sports, the sexism behind it, and also working in broadcasting, since that's something that we both do. So we'll be right back.
Most of the time, it's easy to know which option is better. Other times, not so much. So it's good to know that Mazola corn oil has 4 times more cholesterol-blocking plant sterols than olive oil. And a recent study found that it can help lower cholesterol 2 times more. Take care of those you love and cook deliciously. Mazola makes it better.
La Esperanza.
We are back. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, welcome back to the Sports Break. I'm Renee Washington here with Erica Vanstone, and we just talked about roller derby. We explained the sport, we explained how Erica got into it as a competitor and working in broadcasting, and then we touched and talked about women's sports versus male sports. And I'm glad you're here, because it's usually just me and Kwame, and I'm the only one with the female perspective about playing female sports and growing up as a female athlete. And you're constantly reminded, I know I was and still am, that you're a female athlete. You're not the big, strong men of the world.
The F word is first.
Yes.
Always.
Always. So how have you been reminded that you're a female sport? Even playing a contact sport like roller derby, where you can compete against men.
Right. So I've definitely experienced moments in, and I've worked, I knew early on when I was working in roller derby broadcasts that I really needed to experience other sports, and doing what I was doing in other sports. I worked in the Atlantic League of Professional Baseball with the Camden River Sharks that have now since departed. But pretty early on, I was reminded that I was a woman in that arena. I moved into broadcasting the second season I was there, and one of the things that I could not do was have the same access to the athletes to interview them, because those interviews were typically done in the locker room.
Right.
And I was told that that was not a place that I could go.
Right.
So, you know, I think those are the little types of barriers that are consistently kind of put in the way of women who are really working hard to broadcast or become a part of professional sports. I worked with the Philadelphia Soul, and I had a phenomenal time working with them. They did such a good job of putting a production together.
Right.
And every time I was out there, I felt like I was part of this really exciting experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's really tough to be a feminist in sports. You know, to go out, as we talked about the Lingerie Football League, you know, they're like part of the sports experience that you have at a Soul game is to go out and watch, you know, the dancers and the cheerleaders, and to understand where that fits into the conversation. And it's not so much feeling that that's wrong in any way. I think that's part of the entertainment package as it is right now. But looking out there and trying to figure out, like, do I see myself modeled anywhere here? Like, where do I fit in? And I think that's another part of the conversation as women broadcasters, is looking out and realizing you don't see yourself here yet.
Oh, yes.
And that's terrifying, right?
Yes, very, very true. I think that's the hardest thing that a lot of people don't realize is, as a female in any capacity, whether it's a job, sports, especially in broadcasting where you're on camera, a lot of it becomes shallow. It's about how you look, who you know, and not that you actually got there because you deserve to be there,
right,
and that you're
because you know
talented enough.
sports, because
Right,
you understand.
right.
I have applied for jobs to broadcast entities and have basically, been told in no uncertain terms that listeners wouldn't think that I was credible.
Oh, wow.
Because I was a woman. So those are the types of situations where you have to really listen.
Yeah.
You have to really listen to understand where that line is,
Right.
and pay attention, and just, if you're a woman interested in getting involved in sports broadcasting, go into it with eyes wide open and understand that you don't see yourself out there yet.
Right.
You're going to have to make that space for yourself, and it's going to be probably pretty painful at times.
Yes.
But that you just have to keep your head down and keep going. And I think it was a similar situation with roller derby broadcast, where we just had to keep going and creating this image of the woman athlete that we wanted to see out there.
Right.
And consistently put that out there first and say, no, this is what we are. This is what we are.
Right.
And then go out and sell that.
Yeah, and I love that your sport allows for women and men to compete, or to compete separately. And you do not see that. I mean, I know at the youth level for sports, you do see some girls on boys' teams. You don't boys are not allowed to play on girls' teams.
Right.
But as you get higher into the more competitive levels, you're not seeing girls playing with boys. You're seeing it's separate. The leagues start to change, the rules start to change.
Right.
And it's just kind of this idea that you're playing sports, I'm playing sports, we're playing technically different sports.
Yeah.
So then the ratings are different, and the viewership is different, because people prefer to watch the NBA versus the WNBA, or male soccer versus female soccer. And is that something that you feel can help maybe even change the culture by growing and really exposing just how beneficial it is to have, or how normal it is to have men and women compete at the roller derby?
Yeah, I sat in a conference a few years ago where I had a female producer tell me that women's basketball wasn't compelling.
Oh gosh.
And my reaction to that was, I think that's crap. And I think that what's crap about it is that if you give these women's sports the same production resources, the same graphics package, the same great announcing, it's just as awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if the WNBA is not shortened to be a 3-4 month sport
Right.
versus the NBA, which is basically all year round now, with the exposure of summer league. But you raised some very valid points, and I wish that we could have this conversation longer. And especially since, as I told you before, Kwame and I are butt heads in terms of female perspective.
Who doesn't Kwame butt heads with?
This is true. This is very true. Whereas we see things on the moral side and how men and women can be the same, or at least compared to the same. So, Erica, I thank you for joining us on our show today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But, as always, I hope you have a great weekend, first off. But we will be back Tuesday with the Sports Break for more talk about the latest and greatest things going around in the sports world. Thank you for watching the Sports Break. I'm Renee Washington, and we'll see you next time.